Today's guest is Stefan Stefansson, who is a relationship coach for men. And he's somebody who has struggled with relationships for over 20 years. And basically, as a result of that, he was determined to find the best way forward, turn his life around, and basically experience a relationship that he has always wanted. So as a result, he had this passion to be a solution-oriented coach focused on helping other men master themselves and create the relationship of their dreams. So, Stefan, how are you doing? Thank you very much for being on the show.
Hi, Diego. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm doing really well today, actually. We had some sun today in London, so it's a rare occasion.
That's pretty cool, because I know usually I haven't been to London, but I know obviously the jokes, like you have like the English weather and it's always like rainy, etc.
Yes.
So I'm glad you guys are getting some sun. So I'm in Toronto, but ironically we've been having very British weather for the past like 2 weeks. So I get the need for sun. I 100% understand it. But other than that, so I'd love for you to dive into and give us some background on you and the story of 20 years of this kind of like relationship struggle and finally solving it. So I'd love for you to just kind of break that down for us in your words.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so how I got myself here today is for the next 20 years when I started looking into getting into a relationship. I'm a very analytical person and kind of work very well when somebody gives me instructions, and so I've kind of struggled always I'm a doer. I kind of like to fix things like a men are in general. They kind of focus on, yeah, we're going to fix it. And so it take me a long time to realize after 2 long-term relationships. First one I was too young and too naive and didn't really recognize all the kind of the wrong things I was doing. And then my second one, I got much more to the other side of just being too accommodating and kind of losing myself in the relationship, that I didn't really have a partnership. So what I found from that, as I came out of that second relationship, I was a single dad, struggling to understand why my second long-term relationship was going. So I went into a lot of self-reflection. I wanted to find a way that how I could be a better person in the relationships and kind of see where the failings were, and as well being able to identify the failings on the other side, how to address them, and so forth. And that kind of brought me onto a path of self-improvement. Got invited to actually taking part in a coaching class, like a year-long program that I really enjoyed. And then out of that, I kind of came out with coaching for men was actually something I would actually be able to sell at because of my experience. And I find if you talk of something that you actually know of and if you've kind of failed, because I usually learn best when I fail and I kind of improve from that. And that's how I kind of got to this point in my life now, that I'm kind of creating a framework for my experience and information I kind of taken up, and kind of creating a way to help men to kind of find the relationship for themselves, as I'm still doing today, and I'm still learning. So want to kind of help and to still let that information to others.
Absolutely. I love that sentiment of walking your own talk, right? Like it's so many times, because I speak to a lot of hearts and entrepreneurs, both on the podcast and with clients. It's like, to go through that thing that caused you so much pain ends up being the gift that you want to share, with the world, right? Like, I've overcome this. I now want to help other people overcome this. It's a theme that comes up so many times, pretty much guest to guest, of that, my mess becomes my message. So I applaud you, not just for going there, but also for coming at it from the perspective on a walk my own talk. I've experienced this. I've transcended aspects of it. And now, I'm steps ahead and it can actually help somebody who is in the same way. So I'd love for you then to dive into, what is your business right now and what are the challenges that you're experiencing in it?
Yeah, so as I started on this journey, and I have a day job, and I'm kind of trying to do this on the side, and then hopefully kind of build it up to so it could be my primary focus. Is that what I find is that being able to find the right tools and the right concept and kind of to put my word or my message out there that is kind of noticed and working smart. I think kind of one thing that resonated much with what you kind of talk about is it a skill problem or is it a me problem? I think a lot of what we find is finding the skills is easy. You can be taught that, but it's all about being able to identify who you are, how you work best, and how you can work smarter, not harder. And especially with now, like today's society, where we have so much information being thrown on left and right, and you can just fall into a rabbit hole of like chasing some information, and then an hour later you're always gone. And it's kind of a understanding yourself, I think, is very important, and it kind of brought me onto this path. And for how I worked, my background is in IT, customers, implementing customer solutions, selling solutions, and now kind of being in sales. And then it's kind of migrated into having to now do my own sales and own promotion in my own business, and I'm kind of trying to yeah, as I say, work smarter, not harder.
Beautiful. Yeah. And definitely I can see that emerging from somebody who, is in IT, understands systems, wants to, optimize and maximize things. Like that's like it makes sense for somebody from your background to ask a question like that. So what I would be curious about then is if you just expand on that, like, what does that actually mean? Does that mean in terms of time, as far as like, because I have these demands for the day job, how do I juxtapose that and balance that out with the business? Is it in terms of the amount of time I spend promoting myself or not promoting myself? Like, what do you mean for you, work smarter, not harder?
So for me is obviously the management of the time, but for me it's doing more work on actually the promotion part of things. One of the things I struggle with is I have a dyslexia. So writing text and getting things out of my head into a written text has always been very difficult for me. I'm very good at analyzing, and if you tell me your story, I can very quickly understand the kind of the dynamics of it. And it's helped me quite a bit, and that's why I kind of put me down on the path I'm on now, is that I'm very good at empathizing with people and then trying to get them to having like everybody talks about when you're doing coaching is about being probing, open questions, and have people lead them to a direction of where they want to go instead of you tell them how to fix it. Because if you fix it for somebody, it's never going to get fixed. People have to find it in themselves to want to like walk that path and get there. So for me, it's kind of getting the path of finding the smartest way how I can actually promote myself in the best possible way that will play to my strengths, and kind of walk around that.
Beautiful.
Aspect.
So in that spirit, given that you are a coach yourself, you know kind of the mechanics of the process, like if you were coaching yourself, what would you tell yourself?
That's exactly when you know that those kind of things. For me, it's like for being an analytical mind, then I would put down like an execution list of like what I need to achieve in a, like say in 3 months time. I would have to say what's my goal after 3 months. Like there's everybody talks about like I think you probably heard the term like the 12-week year. There's a term in IT called QPRs, where they break down where you want to be in 3. So not having the goal too far. And so for me would be break it down and then follow through on those elements, or being able to execute or find resources that can help me get that written or get that my promotion, and how I know how best to know where to go to promote myself in the easiest way. Because as far as for me, it's like I don't always know like people are talking about the social media, obviously like Facebook and Instagram and all those kind of things, but I struggle sometimes with to put what is in my mind to create a story maybe on on an Instagram story or something like that, because I'm much better to listen to somebody and then analyzing it in that way than I actually have to come up with it myself and put it on a piece of paper.
Got it. So what's the bigger issue then? Is it the actual plan of like, what is the list of tasks that I got to do next to move towards my goal? Or is it something like what you said at the end, right? Like, I don't know how to show up in a way that is going to matter to the people that need me.
It's more the latter. It's not how to show up and how to get my wording into a understandable concept that I could put it in a promoted way, so to speak.
Beautiful. So if you know that that's the problem that you need solving, how have you approached solving it before?
I've tried to find somebody that could help me write it, but I haven't been successful finding anybody that does that particular piece of thing. Or if it do, then it's more geared for like enterprises or like a small starter, and I'm more of a one-man band and at the moment still. So it's more having the time to sit down with somebody, and then as well finding somebody that I think could be helpful.
Okay. So that is to teach you the skills of showing up in a way that's relevant to the people that need you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So given that you're somebody who is very good at analyzing and knows exactly like, okay, I can take a broad problem, figure out what the essence of it is, and know what the next step is for the solution, how difficult is it for you to find a coach who can teach you that skill?
So I'm not so much. So that's the thing I'm struggling with, to find the right resources. That's why I kind of ended up coming to you, see what you were all about and how you kind of how you focus your work. So yeah, I'm kind of trying to kind of then there's a lot of coaches out there that do different things. So I'm trying to figure out, do I need a coach, or do I need a marketing person or a PR person or somebody that can like interview me with like a fixed concepts, or something like that in a way. And I think as well, sometimes I have like when I went through your masterclass about so I have the grind and hustle element, and as well the self-sabotage effort, when I know what I do, but I'm procrastinate from of doing it, or leave it too late, and then it's kind of a rushed job at the end. Kind of remember like in some talk I heard somebody like the favorite term of the procrastination monkey. Takes the wheel and it drives me off somebody else.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So I'm glad you bring that up, because that's why I was asking the questions, right? To highlight one very key thing here, which is I think when individuals like yourself who are so well adapted and gifted at essentially everything above the neck, right? Like you're very good at using your head to solve problems, right? So it's kind of what I was getting at. Okay, well, like if you had to choose a coach based off of the skill lack that you may have, and or find somebody to, take what you like what's in your head and transcribe it in some sort of meaningful way into content that's written, that doesn't seem to me like that's really a problem that somebody like you would struggle with. Like that is, I think, well within your skill set to like figure out who's the person that can help me with that. What I think is the more interesting thing that you brought up is, well, I'll list a few things and then you can let me know which one resonates the most, right? Like at one point you said, because of my dyslexia, like I'm not really good at making, written word, like written text and that sort of media, right? Which is interesting because, in a day and age where video is becoming more relevant than text, right? That seems like, okay, it might not necessarily be the issue that you're like, the issue is not the issue, right? So that's number one. Number two, you mentioned procrastination quite a bit. right? So I'll get to kind of the finish line, or I'll delay the finish line, and I'll self-sabotage in some sort of way. Okay. So my question is more, is this less about figuring out who is the one that can get the stuff out of my head into a usable form, and more about some aspect of visibility and expression?
I would say more about the visibility and instruction kind of thing. And I think you're right when you kind of brought it out and kind of summarized it. I think I have an analytical brain where I can find the resources I need. It's more about the execution of it, or making it happen, or not have other things coming in front, that I can have focusing on one thing at a time. I think that's kind of one of my probably my biggest is that, like everybody, like a lot of people do, is that there's too many things are going on at the same time, kind of thing.
Got it. So if we just switch gears a little bit and actually go a little bit back to the way we started this whole thing, which is introducing you as a relationship coach who had spent 20 years, learning these lessons about relationships. So you had mentioned, I think, two of it. Like, one was like I lost myself in one relationship, and the other one was I was kind of too young and too immature. So I'm just kind of curious, what major lessons you learned out of your relationship experience that you bring to your everyday life right now?
My biggest one is communication and being present. I think is one of the biggest thing I have learned with this is the communication and being able to express what you need out of a relationship, and not be afraid of actually being open about your needs. Because I think a lot of people will, especially men, they will fall for a very glamorous, beautiful woman, but it may not be the perfect partner, or they are just more thinking of, oh, she looks nice on my arm, kind of thing, and but they're not really expressing, or they're not really thinking what I actually want. What is the key thing in my life that I want in my life that's going to make me happy? Because like there's a famous saying, I will show you a beautiful woman, and I will show a man that's tired of being with her. Because at the end of the day, the beauty is I should say, skin deep, but it's always the inner part of the person that you will actually want to stay with in the long term. And the other thing as well is respect. Is about being respectful to the other party's wants and needs. I think it's very important.
Beautiful. So if we take that first part of what you said, right, the communication, the presence, the expression of needs, okay, in the relationship, right? Essentially, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like the culminating skills or characteristics of authentically showing up in the relationship is kind of like what, okay. So if that resonates with you, how could you take that and apply it towards the business struggles that you're finding yourself in right now?
I was like, then if I would apply that in that, is basically be true to myself and work towards the goals I've put out for myself, and try to be more what's the word, kind of committed to actually doing the plan that I put together, instead of, I think a certain way, I think it's kind of probably we're going little circles. It's like it's the self-sabotaging, and then probably underneath as well, having a little bit because I haven't done the coaching for a very long time. I've helped a number of people that actually gone quite well, but it's still that self-doubt that you have with yourself, and that's, I think, sometimes is the self-doubt that fuels the procrastination or the sabotage. Is that it's like I read somewhere, somebody mentioned like you hit your upper limit of things, is that you actually you sabotage yourself, so you can't actually go to the next level, and then kind of breaking through that glass ceiling. I think is a little bit kind of the focus here.
Yeah, 100%. I would agree with you. And I mean, I think we're talking about the same thing, like in the Big Leap. That's what the author talks about, where he's
Yeah,
like, every
exactly.
time,
Yeah,
yeah, where every time we're about to hit
yeah,
that like highest peak of our current comfort zone of goodness, abundance, wellness, the next, like whatever good thing, that's usually where like we hit that upper limit problem and something strikes first. It's self-sabotage. So we get back to a more mediocre kind of baseline, right? So it's something that we
yeah,
all struggle with. So good on you for identifying that. And everything that you just mentioned right now, right? So kind of going around into that circle, and really this comes back to, okay, so I'm kind of doubting myself that I can actually show up to be the coach that I want to be. The part that I think is most relevant for you to recognize here is all of those self-sabotaging patterns that get you to stop right before you go forward. They're actually solutions, they're not problems.
yeah,
Okay. And here's what I mean by that. When you were saying at the beginning, like, okay, so I need to figure out like what is the strategy? Do I hire this person? Do I hire that person? How do I get the text out? How is it structured? What am I supposed to say? Right? All of those things are problems that essentially relate to the surface level thing of like the surface level problem. The solution is I keep myself lost in those elements, so I never really have to face the true bit, which is, in my observation from the outside looking in, the exact same wounding that you experienced and overcame in your relationship that's now showing up in business, right? How do I authentically show up in this container that is unapologetic, unfiltered, asking for what I want, being what I want, and doing it in a way that actually moves me towards the thing that I want, right?
yeah.
So before I go on, how does all of that land for you?
No, absolutely. I think that's very relevant for sure. And I think as well, it's kind of, as you use that word, authentic. It's about, I think where I struggle sometimes, I think I want to be that authentic person, but then I will start to have self-doubt, or will have, because I did something and it wasn't 100%, or I feel that I didn't do 100%, and then I'll start to be quite critical, or kind of makes me lose my drive a little bit. So as a kind of a kind of maybe a lack of a better word, not be so hard on myself, kind of thing.
Yeah, like the inner critic hits right away,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And it's interesting that the inner critic hits right away, and then the way that your brain deflects of that is it starts to look for the surface level solutions,
yeah,
right? How do I write a good Instagram post? Oh, but with my dyslexia, that's a challenge. So therefore, like maybe I should figure out a PR firm. Like it's adding layers to remove you from the real game you need to play here, which is just like you did in relationships. It's how do I step into my authentic self in the container of a business, knowing that each time I go to do that, it is going to be another trigger that's going to show me another aspect of myself where I still have not healed. I'm not good enough. This isn't going to work. I probably shouldn't be, like, whatever the story is that got put on top of your true self, which like it wants to emerge this business. I think that's abundantly clear. This is what you want to do, right? So how does all of that land for you?
yeah. Absolutely. I think as for me, funny that to actually come up now is that I've just had a thought about what had happened with my daughter the other day. Exactly the same thing situation was in. She was talking like I didn't do well, and she was doing some dance routine or something, and I was like, I said to her, like, if this was your friend that had failed, how would you talk to her? It's about knowing as well. Like you need, I think, like everybody talked about, you kind of need to remember you need to be your own best friend and talk to yourself in a way that you would talk to your best friend. Okay, you would maybe be blunt in certain things, but you still be. It's not about. I think it comes to that thing as well. Is not always be 100%, but be okay with 80% or 70. I'm not saying all the time, but still 80 is better than 20, kind of thing. And I think as well, like a lot of people talk about, and I find for myself is to start. The start is always the most difficult part for me, to take that first step. It's like I'm not really. I'm not. My favorite thing is not to go to the gym. So, but if you get me into the gym, I will do the gym. I will be like do a proper workout. But just to get me into the gym has always been the most kind of a challenging bit for me. So it's kind of the start is always the hardest for me.
And what's so scary about the start?
I just don't know. It's I will find something else, or it will take too much time. I don't have the time. I will find something.
Okay.
And I know that's what I'm trying to kind of train myself into trying to work through that in a more easier way, to find a more positive mentors and stuff to start that journey.
Perfect. So are you okay to dive into that part a little bit more, like
Sure,
the starting
absolutely.
aspect? Okay. So when you think about yourself starting, what do you feel in your body?
For me, it would be to start some, depending on it is, like for gym, it's just the journey to get there. There's a waste of time to drive there for 20 minutes, having to change, get in the gym, and then the shower afterwards, and then come home. So
Okay.
that's,
What about the
so
business? Like if you were to start the business?
for me, it would be, there's just too many, like probably sometimes I find there's too many steps to without seeing maybe the actually anything out of it, like how much effort do I need to put into it? Like I would maybe put 2 or 3 posts together on Instagram or whatever, and I don't feel maybe they're either good enough or they don't, I don't get any feedback from it.
Okay.
So there's more for me than I'm gonna maybe putting too high expectation on the work in the beginning. So I'll kind of maybe procrastinate because I know it will probably not be good enough or something like that.
Got it. So that's a great explanation of the thought processes that go on in your head. Like a good observation. What's the narrative around doing this thing, right? What I find interesting is that your brain went there when the question was, okay, well, how do you feel in your body when you think about posting on Instagram about what you do?
My body will feel tired or lack energy.
Okay, so tired of lacking energy. Perfect.
Yeah.
Where do you feel that in your body? Is it all over? Is it any one particular place?
Never really thought about it that way. I probably feel it quite a bit in my back, lower back, probably. And I just feel heavy overall.
Perfect. Are you okay to tune into and see what might come up if we explore that further?
Sure.
Okay. So you can do this however way you prefer, whether you prefer to close your eyes or not close your eyes, like that is completely up to you. But what I invite you to do is just kind of ground yourself a little bit. And let's just start with 3 deep breaths. Perfect. And as you're allowing yourself to exhale, allow yourself to exhale twice the length of the inhale. And as you're finding that you are now more grounded, what I'd invite you to tap into is that part of your back, so your lower back where you feel the tension. Tune into that part again, right? So you're thinking about, I'm posting something on Instagram, and this is where I feel tension, heaviness. tiredness, tune into that part, and then just you let me know when you're there.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. If that part could talk, what would it say?
Would say I feel pressure. I feel overwhelmed.
Pressure
Feel
and
being
overwhelm.
overstretched.
Okay. And for what? In general, about something specific?
Mm. Probably that that I'm worried about that I will be a good enough provider, and my family is going to be safe.
Okay.
As in, am I doing the right thing by going into this business, and will it give me enough to kind of be secure and looking after my family and keep her safe?
So certainly a lot of pressure, right? If I'm going to go and make a post on Instagram, it's much less about the post on Instagram and, you know, your expression, the stuff that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually your body is telling you you're carrying this massive burden, that this one post, this one next step represents the burden of providing for my whole family. It's a
Yep.
lot of pressure to put on one micro step towards your business.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. And how does it feel when you get that reflected back to you?
Feels naive in a way. Just always, I think the core and the lane for me, like my whole core being has always been about family and security and keeping them safe. So I think it kind of always comes back to that. Anything I'm kind of trying to achieve kind of reflects onto that, probably in my subconscious a little bit. That I'm just, it's kind of a, you know, I wouldn't say I'm a true believer of being an entrepreneur, but I'm more of a person that is like, if I get something, I'm more of a doer, if that makes sense. So I'm more the Steve Wozniak to Steve Jobs kind of person.
Yeah, got it. Kind of
You
like
have the
the
vision
really,
guy.
really good number two, right? Like
Yeah,
I make the entrepreneur work, right? Like that kind
yeah,
of sentiment, right? Yeah,
yeah.
understood.
And now
So
that I need to be involved, it kind of scares the living shit out of me.
yeah, like you're dependable, like you understand the full vision, you can be reliable to execute, but the responsibility or the pressure of being the one that leads the vision, that's a different story. Okay, so that's totally fair. The reply that you had after you tuned into your back, right? Like it was very naive. So what do you mean by that?
Thinking that you're putting so much pressure or making that one little step be such a big thing or big deal. And I feel like being that naive, that like building up that all that pressure over something that is just a post is not going to happen. Anything, the world is not going to help, kind of thing.
Which is logically accurate,
Yes.
but not emotionally accurate.
No.
Emotionally, it's extremely real. It's real to the point where, you know, who knows how much time and mental real estate you've taken contemplating, how would I do this business? What would it look like? Am I good enough to do it? Can I do it? I should make this. It should look like that. Who should I hire? Who should I not? Like, it's a lot of energy expelled, pretty much run, like being on that hamster wheel of going nowhere, but spending a lot of energy on there. So the reason I wanted to bring it back to that comment, I would challenge you to consider that it's your critic that's saying it's naive.
Yeah.
because it's not naive. It's actually debilitating to the point where these parts of you are so committed to keeping you here because here feels safer than out there, where you run the risk of completely and utterly debilitating your family. Right?
I think it's like what you mentioned earlier, like I'm very good at analyzing and being analytical about the situation, and again, analytical things away. But I don't think I always and that's where I always struggle, and that's why that's kind of went into this way of thinking, is I need to be more in touch with my emotional side. I think that's my biggest drawback in my personalities, that I need to be more in touch with my emotions. And
100%.
things like.
Yeah. I could not agree more. And I applaud you for making that connection, because that's exactly what this is, right? As somebody who is kind of on the recovery end of that very same problem, one that I'm not sure how much you know of my story, but like that was a big factor in making me crash my first business, is I was trying to outthink and outdo my emotions. But I mean, it's kind of like trying to eat soup with a fork, like it's just not going to work, right? So the fact that you recognize that, I think, is the first right step to really diving into what is at the core of the issue. Because the secondary things of like, what do I post on social media, that's ever going to be as good as your ability to tap into your authenticity and unapologetically express it. So it's like a secondary consideration to what really is in front of you, right? And to really unpack that for yourself, whether you choose to go into like the business full time, or becomes like a side hustle that makes you an extra whatever like per year, or I don't do it at all, but like I'm so much more in tune with who I am and I show up better for my work, my family, whatever. That is the string that connects it all together, right? It is that reconnection with your core self in a way that feels safe expressing it, right? Again, just like you did with the relationships, this is now another avenue for you to explore the exact same thing.
Yeah. And I like when we talk about it, I mean, I'm most very good at analyzing everything away, or like I know that's why I'm good at putting myself in empathize with other people, because I can see from an analytical way of how it actually worked, and that's why the kind of, as you're saying, the emotional side I need is something I'm still working on, and trying to find a better way of understanding that for myself.
Beautiful. Well, I think as far as where we can take that journey in just this container of the podcast, we can't solve it all in one episode. I wish we could, but it's not really how it works. So from your perspective, though, like, does this feel complete, or is there still something left outstanding?
No, I think that's probably, no, for me, I think that's probably coming to the core of the underlying kind of what I need to focus on. I think to get this get myself under control, not under control as such, but more out of control. Let's put it that way. I think because when you're analytical, you're always trying to keep yourself under control. And the other thing I find sometimes, I'm sometimes scared of my emotional side, as in it can be fiery and can be ruthless in a way. So I do try to tone it in a bit, or I kind of release it in a sarcastic humor that doesn't always work very well. So that's so I think that's as I say, is a very important for me to have a more in-depth look into, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, this is kind of, and I'll go on a little bit of a tangent, but yeah, this is like if you're familiar with like the 5 personality patterns, like this is very typical rigid pattern, right? Where all of the energy goes up and into the head, and like that's kind of the level of existence, right? So that's kind of what I told you at the beginning. From the neck up, you're very comfortable and very good, but now you're hitting the limits of where that can actually take you, right? It needs to be neck down, that's the part you not only need to learn to embrace, communicate with, but then also process and safely express, right? Which is a whole other skill set. Like I said, that will take you wherever you decide to go with your business or not, like regardless, that's going to add
Right.
value to your life, right? So in that case, if you could then just summarize in your own words, your experience of what you came into here with, and any highlights or takeaways for you at the end of it.
I mean, my expectation was actually more to understand what I was doing in my business, but what I've kind of then realized is I was actually enjoyed the session quite a lot and gave me a lot of insight, and kind of highlighted again for me that it's more the emotional and getting more in touch with my kind of the emotional side of things instead of just analyzing or analytically push things away in a way. I think I use analytical behavior to kind of as a shield to shield myself in a way, instead of letting things come in and just be vulnerable to myself.
Beautifully said. So in that case, if you can just close us off, for the people that may want to connect with you, like where can they find you? What's the best place for them to contact you at?
Yeah, so you can contact me on my website. It's I have my coaching business is called The High Value Man, and my website is highvalueman.is. And then I have can be reached at the same email address, stefan@highvalueman.is, and Facebook and Instagram as well.
Beautiful. Well, we'll definitely include all those in the show notes. Stefan, thank you very much for coming on and showing up in this way. And for everybody else that's listening, we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for having me.